Hi, everyone. So today we are going to read this poem called Nothing Gold Can Stay. So you read this poem in the text yesterday in the Outsiders when you read chapter 5. There was an allusion. An allusion is when a text references another text. So it references this poem, Nothing Gold Can Stay. So today we're going to read it, and I'm so excited because I love reading poetry. So when we read poetry, just a few things to know. We always want to start by reading the poem first without analyzing it, without thinking of anything. We just want to read it and get a vibe for the poem. Then, after we've gotten a vibe for what the poem is about, we're going to read it a second time. And this time, and this second time, is when we can start to notice our words that are popping out to us. We can start to get a vibe, a feel for the poem, understanding what we think the mood might be, how the poem is making us feel. And then the third time that we read, yes, we need to always read poetry more than once. And typically we want to read it at least 3 times and always out loud because poetry is meant to be spoken out loud. It is one of those rare forms where when you say words, the way that you say a word is included in that meaning of the word. And so if you're not reading it out loud, you're not going to notice certain things about the poem. So this third read is when we're going to begin to analyze the poem, and that's where we can start to be thinking about some of our key questions here. So the poem is titled Nothing Gold Can Stay. And the first thing that I'm going to notice is, of course, my author. So my author is Robert Frost, or my poet rather, is Robert Frost. And so many of you might recognize this name. Robert Frost is a very famous poet. Dare I say, maybe one of the most famous poets. If anyone has heard of that poem where they talk about two paths diverging in a wood and he took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. That poem was written by Robert Frost. He's written many, many, many poems, but it also is important for us to recognize his lifespan, right? So we're talking the late 1800s to 1900s is when this guy was writing. So that's always important to inform us a little bit about our poem. So let's get into it. Nothing gold can stay. Remember the first read, we're just going to read through the poem. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold, her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. Ooh, powerful, very powerful. Okay, so notice I didn't write anything as I was reading it that first time. Now I'm going to go back and read it for a second time. This time when I'm reading, I'm going to start to mark up the text. I'm going to notice what words are powerful to me, what words are standing out. Nature's first green is gold. So that first line, this word gold is popping out to me. And also this word nature seems to be kind of important. Her hardest hue to hold. I'm not really sure what this word hue means, so I might go back and figure that out. So I think actually I'm going to circle that word instead of underline it because I need to go back and figure out what this word hue means. And then of course hold is another word that's standing out. Her early leaf's a flower. Flower seems to be the word there, but only so an hour. Hour for me is the word on that line. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. Leaf and grief here. And Eden. I wonder if they're talking about the Garden of Eden. So dawn goes down to day. Ooh, all those D's. Down goes down to day. That's hard for me to say. But nothing gold can stay. Here, this word nothing really stands out as well as stay. So I have so many things to analyze. I have so many things to analyze in this poem. And so now I'm going to start analyzing it. Now, on my third read, I have a grasp of it. So I'm going to start looking at things. I'm already noticing as I'm thinking here that I got some couplets happening, right? Remembering that a couplet is when you have words that rhyme right next to each other. So gold, hold. Notice those rhyming words. Flower, hour. Again, rhyming words. Leaf, grief. Rhyming words. Day, stay. Rhyming words. And I'm actually going to change my color for this my third time around. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. So I'm thinking with nature's first green, I'm thinking that that is talking about spring and her hardest hue to hold. So hue, I believe, and I'm going to look it up using my phone dictionary, but I believe that hue means like color. So when we're thinking about the color, hardest hue to hold, I'm thinking that it's referring back to this idea of green. So this idea of like spring first blossoming, everything being fresh. I'm thinking that it's saying that like spring can't last. So now if I think about the connotation of those two words, connotation means like the feeling that I get. I'm getting a positive feeling on this first line here. Nature's first green is gold. Like gold, that's a very positive word, I feel. Her hardest hue to hold. But I'm getting kind of a negative feeling here, right? I also see these H's. That's called alliteration, right? When you have those repetition of the first letter of those words over and over again. Her hardest hue to hold. That reminds me of down here when they have alliteration with these D's, right? Down, dawn, down, today. And again, I get that negative connotation there. So I'm connecting those two negative connotations. So nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaves a flower. Again, I get a positive connotation here. Her early leaves a flower. So here I'm getting some imagery. I'm getting this fact that like when spring is blooming, like the first moments, right? After you have those green of the buds on the trees, then you start to get flowers, right? So I'm just going to put for myself so I remember I'm talking about flowers on trees here. But only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf. So again, this negative feeling here. So Eden sank to grief. Oh, another negative. Wow, this mood is changing. So dawn goes down to day. Nothing gold can stay. Oh my gosh, how harsh, right? So if I look just at the feeling that I was getting, right? I had this kind of back and forth between positive, negative feeling, right? Nature's first green is gold. It's so hard to keep that greenness in the spring. Her early leaves a flower. So again, oh my gosh, there's flowers everywhere. How grand. And then dramatically it changed, but only so an hour. It's fleeting. This grandness, this spring, this beauty is all very fleeting. And then all of a sudden I have what we call your turn. So every poem, actually I want a different color here. Every poem has to have a turn, and the turn is when the feeling shifts. So if I had to say, where does the feeling shift? I would say it shifts when it says, then leaf subsides to leaf, right? So we have this word of changing from looking at early spring to now it's like, well, it's not really spring anymore. We're starting to get to fall. Leaves are changing. The Garden of Eden is sinking down in grief, right? Just how humans failed in the Garden of Eden, if you're familiar with that story. All of a sudden there was disappointment on the humans. Maybe there's disappointment in this spring not lasting. And at the end of the day, right, as dawn goes down to day, so as the sun is setting, or the sun is rising, rather, it's no longer dawn, nothing gold can stay. What a powerful poem. There's so much to think about here. So this is what I challenge you to do. My challenge for you is I challenge you to think of a few things. And the first thing that I want you to think about is this idea of spring, right? We have nature's first green is gold, right? Her hardest hue to hold. There's this sense of thinking about everything connected to spring. What does it mean to be in spring? What are some words that we might think about when we think of spring? And my challenge for you is to think about, what does that spring symbolize? How does this text connect to the outsiders? Why is it put in the outsiders? I see a repetition of this word gold. This idea of gold seems to be constantly repeating, not only in this text, but also in maybe the outsiders. So I want you to think about, what does spring symbolize? I also want you to think about, like, what is the meaning of this poem? What is this poem trying to say? And when we think about meaning, we're talking about theme. So what is the theme of this poem? And lastly, I want you to think about, how does this meaning, or how does this symbolism, how does this connect to the outsiders? Okay, so those are your challenges. You have 3 challenges. What does spring symbolize? What is the theme of this poem? And how does it connect to the outsiders? Please submit your answers. They're in your either your outsiders packet or just an assignment on Schoology. And we're really looking forward to seeing what you think about this poem. Obviously, S.E. Hinton liked it enough to throw it in the book, so it has to have some sort of significance. It has to connect in some way. Your challenge today is to figure out, how does it connect?